I helped an Apache mother and her son. Now she wants me to give her another child and stay by her. The young traveler had always been drawn to places untouched by the rush of modern life. When he first heard about the remote Apache community nestled deep in the hills, he felt a quiet pull he could not ignore. He packed his few belongings, said his brief goodbyes, and set out on the long journey. The roads were rough and winding, and at times he wondered if he had made the right decision. But as he climbed the final hill and saw the small cluster of houses with smoke rising from the chimneys, a strange sense of calm settled over him. There was something peaceful about the way the sunlight hit the hills, casting golden shadows on the dry earth. He walked cautiously into the village, unsure of how he would be received. The Apache people were known for their pride and resilience, and he did not want to intrude or offend. He kept his hands visible and his steps slow, greeting the few people he passed with a gentle nod. The villagers returned his gesture cautiously, studying him with careful eyes. Some whispered to one another, and he guessed they were curious about this stranger in their midst. It wasn't long before he met her. She was a mother, not much older than he was, sitting outside a small adobe house with her young son clinging to her side. Her hands were busy mending a torn blanket, and the boy watched the other children play a few yards away. There was a quiet strength about her, a resilience that came from years of facing life's challenges alone. But there was also weariness in her eyes, the kind that comes from sleepless nights and endless worry. The traveler approached slowly, offering a warm smile. "Hello," he said softly, careful not to startle her. She looked up, startled at first, but something in his gentle voice put her at ease. "Hello," she replied cautiously, her grip tightening slightly on her son's hand.
The boy looked at him with wide, curious eyes, hiding partially behind his mother.
"I am passing through and thought I would say hello," he explained. "I didn't mean to intrude." There was honesty in his eyes, a kind of kindness that was rare in strangers. She nodded slowly. "You are welcome," she said. "I am Mary, and this is my son Eli." "Nice to meet you," the traveler said, kneeling slightly to be closer to the boy's level. "I'm Daniel." Eli gave a shy nod but didn't speak. Daniel could sense the boy's wariness, which made him smile gently. "Do you like to play outside?" he asked. Eli hesitated, then nodded, glancing toward the other children who were laughing as they ran around. Daniel could see how much the boy wanted to join them but didn't have the confidence to do so alone. He thought of ways he could help, but he knew the first step was simply to gain their trust. Dab. Over the next few days, Daniel returned to Mary and Eli's home. He brought simple gifts, some fruits and vegetables he had carried with him, a few books he thought Eli might enjoy. He never overstepped, never tried to impose himself. Instead, he focused on small acts of kindness, like fixing a leaky roof tile or helping Mary carry water from the well. Gradually, the walls of suspicion and caution began to come down. Mary started to open up to him, sharing stories of her life, her hopes, and her fears. She spoke about the struggles of raising a son alone, about the difficulties of finding work and keeping food on the table. She spoke of nights when she felt hopeless, unsure of how she would manage another day. And Daniel listened, offering gentle words of encouragement, never pretending to have all the answers. He learned about the traditions of her people, the importance of family and community, and the pride that came with self-reliance. One evening, as the sun dipped below the hills and painted the sky with shades of orange and pink, Daniel helped Mary prepare a simple meal. They sat together outside, Eli between them, and shared the food in companionable silence. The boy began to relax, laughing softly at Daniel's clumsy attempts to balance plates and bowls. For the first time, Daniel felt a deep connection with both of them, not just as a visitor, but as someone who truly mattered in their small world.
But it wasn't just about helping with daily chores.
Daniel noticed the little things that made life harder for Mary and Eli. He saw how difficult it was for Mary to find proper medical care when Eli fell sick, how she struggled to afford school supplies, and how exhausted she was from juggling so many responsibilities. He started to think about ways he could make a real difference, not by taking over, but by supporting her in ways that allowed her to regain some peace of mind. One afternoon, while walking through the village with Mary and Eli, Daniel saw a small community garden that had been abandoned. The soil was dry, and weeds had taken over. He suggested they try to revive it together, just enough to grow vegetables that could supplement their meals. Mary looked hesitant, but the idea sparked something in her eyes, a glimmer of hope. Over the next few weeks they worked side by side, clearing weeds, planting seeds, and watering the soil. Eli loved digging in the dirt and watching the tiny sprouts begin to grow. The garden became a symbol of their combined efforts and a tangible reminder that life could improve with patience and care. As their bond grew stronger, Mary began to rely on Daniel more than she had anticipated. She would seek his advice on small decisions, and Eli would run to him for guidance or comfort when things didn't go well. Daniel knew he had to be careful not to overstep, but he also felt a sense of purpose he hadn't known before. Helping this family gave him a reason to be fully present in the moment, and he realized that kindness could create connections, stronger than distance or circumstance. Breaths. One day, after a long afternoon tending to the garden, Mary turned to Daniel with an unusual seriousness in her eyes. "You have helped us more than I can ever say," she said quietly. "Sir, you have given us hope when we had little left. I wish you could stay, at least for a while, to help Eli grow up safe and strong."
Daniel felt a pang of uncertainty.
Bosky in his past. He cared deeply for them, but he also knew he could not stay forever. His life was not bound to this village, and he had his own journey to continue. Yet he could not ignore the trust they had placed in him, nor the quiet fear he sensed in Mary's heart, the fear of facing the future alone. Daniel began, unsure of how to respond. He looked at Eli's hopeful eyes and Mary's tired, earnest face. "I will stay as long as I can," he said finally, "and I will help you find ways to make things easier so you won't have to depend on me forever." That would mean so much, she whispered. Eli smiled, his small hands gripping Daniel's, as if he understood that this stranger had become an important part of their lives. That evening, as the sun disappeared completely and the first stars appeared in the sky, Daniel sat quietly with Mary and Eli outside their home. He thought about the path that had led him here, to a small village in the hills, helping a mother and her son survive and thrive against the odds. Verstai. He realized that sometimes the simplest acts of kindness, bringing food, planting a garden, or just listening, could change a life forever. He also realized that this was only the beginning. Their bond had grown strong. But challenges lay ahead. Mary's trust, Eli's future, and the fragile balance of their lives depended not just on what he could do today, but on how he could guide them toward independence and hope. And as he watched the stars reflect in Eli's wide, curious eyes, Daniel understood that his journey with them had only just begun. The night air was cool and quiet, and Daniel felt a mix of warmth and uncertainty. He had come to help, and he had helped, but now he faced a new challenge. How to continue supporting them without becoming the center of their lives, how to give hope without creating dependence, and how to be a friend in a world that had not always been kind. And as he drifted to sleep that night under a blanket of stars, he knew one thing for certain. He could not turn away. Whatever challenges came next, he would face them with Mary and Eli by his side, even if only for a time. After several weeks in the small Apache village, Daniel had become more than just a visitor. He was someone Mary and Eli could rely on, someone who brought calm and practical help into their lives. The villagers were beginning to recognize him too. Not all at first, but slowly. His presence became a familiar sight. Some were curious about the stranger who had dedicated so much time to helping one family, while others watched quietly, wondering if his kindness would last. Daniel's days started early. Deaths of waters. The mornings were filled with chores and small tasks. He would wake before dawn, help Mary fetch water from the well, and accompany Eli to the tiny schoolhouse in the village. Eli's eyes would light up whenever Daniel held his hand, giving him courage to walk among other children who sometimes laughed at his shyness. Daniel tried to teach him simple lessons along the way, helping him read a few words in a book he had brought, and explaining small things about nature they passed on their walks. Mary watched them, a mixture of relief and quiet awe on her face. She had spent years struggling alone, and though her pride sometimes held her back from admitting it, she welcomed Daniel's help. He didn't just do things for them. He taught, guided, and encouraged. He showed Mary and Eli that even small efforts could grow into something meaningful, that problems could be solved step by step, and that hope could be found even in difficult circumstances. One afternoon, as the sun beat down heavily on the clay rooftops, Daniel noticed that Mary looked unusually tired. She had been standing for hours, preparing a large batch of dried corn for the winter, her hands red and cracked from the work. Daniel stepped forward without hesitation. "Here, let me help," he said, taking some of the heavy baskets from her hands. Mary hesitated, unsure whether it was acceptable for a man, especially a stranger, to do such work. But then she saw the genuine care in his eyes and nodded slowly. Together they worked in quiet harmony. Daniel lifted the heavy loads, washed and sorted the kernels, and even managed to make Mary smile with a small joke about his inability to carry things without almost dropping them. Eli, curious, came over and tried to help, his small hands fumbling but eager. The three of them worked side by side, laughter and shared effort, forming a bond stronger than words. That evening, as they ate a modest meal together outside their home, Mary spoke about her past. She shared stories of her childhood, growing up in the Apache community, learning traditions and survival skills from her elders. Daniel listened, fascinated by her resilience and the richness of her experiences. He admired her ability to remain strong in the face of hardships, her unwavering commitment to her son, and the quiet pride she carried even when life had been harsh.
"You've done so much for us already," Mary said quietly, her eyes searching Daniel's.
"I don't know how we would manage without you." Daniel felt a pang of both pride and concern. He wanted to help, but he knew he could not stay forever. Still, he wanted to make a meaningful difference. "I'm glad I can help," he said softly.
But the most important thing is helping you find ways to manage so you can thrive on your own. I want Eli to grow up strong, not depending on me forever."
Mary nodded, understanding his words. Yet she couldn't hide the relief that came from hearing that someone cared so deeply for her and her son. Eli, sitting beside them, reached over and held Daniel's hand, his small grip warm and trusting. Daniel looked at the boy and realized just how much his presence meant, how fragile yet precious these bonds could be. In the following days, Daniel began introducing small routines to make life easier for the family. He helped Mary organize her household, setting up spaces for food storage, teaching Eli simple cleaning habits, and showing Mary how to keep track of supplies more efficiently. He even suggested that they could grow a few more vegetables in their garden, planting beans, carrots, and tomatoes alongside the corn they had started. The garden flourished slowly, but each sprout was a symbol of hope and progress. Daniel also helped Eli with schoolwork. Some lessons were simple, like practicing letters or counting, but others required patience and encouragement. Eli would often get frustrated when he couldn't understand something, but Daniel always stayed calm.
"It's okay," he would say, smiling gently.
We can try again. Learning takes time."
Mary would watch them,
quietly proud, seeing how her son's confidence grew each day with Daniel's guidance. But as the days passed, Daniel noticed a subtle change.
Mary began to rely on him not just for practical help, but for emotional support as well.
She would ask for his opinion on decisions that were once her own, seek reassurance when she felt anxious, and sometimes linger near him just to talk, even about matters that had little to do with immediate survival. Daniel realized that while his presence was helpful, he had to be careful not to create dependence. He wanted to help, but he also wanted to empower her, not take over her life. One evening, after a long day in the garden, Mary spoke softly, almost hesitantly. "Daniel, I know you have your own life, but I can't help but feel that things are easier when you're here. I don't know if I could manage everything alone again." Daniel paused, thinking carefully. He could see the exhaustion in her eyes, the quiet fear that if he left, she would be left to face the world alone. But he also knew that he could not stay forever. He had to find a balance, a way to help without becoming the center of their lives. "Mary," he said gently, "I want to stay as long as I can, and I want to help you find ways to make things easier for you so that one day you won't need me here all the time. You are strong, and Eli is lucky to have you guiding him." Mary nodded slowly, taking in his words. There was relief in her expression, but also a quiet sadness. She wanted the safety that Daniel's presence provided, but she knew she could not ask him to stay indefinitely. Eli, unaware of the complicated feelings adults sometimes carry, smiled and hugged Daniel tightly, as if sensing the truth without fully understanding it. As the weeks turned into months, the bond between them grew stronger. They celebrated small victories together. The first successful harvest from the garden, Eli mastering a difficult lesson at school, or a small repair in the house that once seemed impossible. Each moment of success brought laughter and pride, but also deeper connections. Daniel began to feel a sense of belonging he had never known before, a feeling that he was part of something bigger than himself. Yet despite the happiness, Daniel could not ignore the growing challenge. Mary's reliance on him was increasing, and he knew he had to start teaching her to manage on her own. He began involving her more in decisions, showing her how to solve problems without immediately stepping in. At first she hesitated, unsure if she could handle everything alone. But with gentle encouragement she began to see that she was capable, and that Daniel's guidance had given her tools she had never had before. As the sun set over the hills and painted the sky in shades of red and gold, Daniel, Mary, and Eli sat outside their home, enjoying a simple meal. They laughed over small jokes, shared stories of the day, and marveled at the beauty of the sky. Daniel looked at them, feeling a mixture of pride, concern, and hope. He knew that the journey was far from over, that challenges would come, and that his role was delicate and important. But he also knew that this was exactly where he was meant to be. For now, helping this family grow stronger, teaching them skills and courage, and sharing moments of joy that would last far longer than his stay. And as darkness fell and the first stars appeared in the sky, Daniel realized that life was a series of small steps, of quiet acts of kindness, of shared effort and trust. He had come to the village as a stranger, but he was no longer just a visitor. He was a part of their daily lives, a source of guidance, and a friend who cared deeply. And though he did not know what the future held, he was certain of one thing. He would face it with Mary and Eli, helping them find strength, hope, and resilience in a world that was often difficult, but also full of possibility. As the days passed, Daniel began to notice something he had not anticipated. Mary's reliance on him was growing stronger. She no longer asked, only for help with chores or advice on small matters. She began to depend on him for decisions that had once been hers alone. Sometimes she would hesitate before taking an action without consulting him, and even small problems were brought to him for guidance. Eli, too, had become increasingly attached, looking to Daniel for comfort, reassurance, and encouragement at every step. At first, Daniel welcomed the attention. He cared deeply for them, and the thought that he was making a meaningful difference gave him satisfaction. But soon he realized that this growing dependence was becoming a delicate issue. He could not stay forever, and he knew that if Mary and Eli became too reliant on him, it could hurt them when he inevitably had to leave. He began to feel a quiet tension each time Mary asked his opinion or hesitated to act without him. One afternoon, as the sun beat down on the small adobe home, Daniel sat with Mary and Eli after finishing a day of gardening. He watched as Mary tried to plan the week ahead, her brow furrowed in worry. "I don't know if I can handle everything on my own," she said softly. "When you're not here, I feel lost. I
don't know if I can manage." Daniel took a deep breath, choosing his words carefully.
"Mary," he said gently, "you are already managing so much. Look at everything you've accomplished. The garden, Eli's schoolwork, the home. You have strength that you may not even see. I'm here to help guide you, not to take over."
You can do this on your own, but it will take time to get used to it.
Pyre. Mary nodded, but Daniel could see the worry in her eyes. It was not easy to let go of reliance, especially when life had been so difficult. He realized that part of his role was to teach her that independence was not abandonment. It was giving her the tools to survive and thrive, even when he was not there. Over the next few days, Daniel started to create small challenges for Mary and Eli, encouraging them to take responsibility for tasks he might have done before. He asked Mary to make decisions about the garden on her own, to plan meals without his guidance, and to solve small problems with Eli without calling him over.
At first, Mary hesitated, unsure of herself.
Eli grew frustrated when Daniel did not immediately solve problems for him, but gradually they both began to rise to the challenges. Daniel also spoke with Eli about independence in gentle ways. "It's okay to make mistakes," he told the boy one afternoon while they repaired a fence in the garden. "Mistakes help us learn. You don't need me to do everything for you. You can try, and I will help you if you need it." Eli listened carefully, his small hands fumbling with the tools, but his determination was clear. He wanted to prove that he could do things on his own, just as Daniel was encouraging. But while progress was being made, Daniel could feel the tension in the air. Mary's dependence was emotional as well as practical. She began to seek him out not just for advice, but for comfort. She would ask him to stay longer in the evenings, to talk with her when she felt worried, and to reassure her when life seemed overwhelming. Daniel understood her feelings. He too had grown attached, but he also knew that he needed to maintain boundaries for everyone's sake. One evening, as the sky turned shades of pink and orange, Daniel and Mary sat outside while Eli played nearby. Mary's voice was quiet but earnest. "Daniel, I know you have your own life, but I feel like I need you here. Not just to help, but to be with us. I can't imagine facing things without you." Daniel felt the weight of her words. He looked at her, seeing the exhaustion and the vulnerability she tried to hide behind quiet strength. He wanted to comfort her, to reassure her that everything would be okay, but he knew he had to be honest. "Mary," he said carefully, "I care about you and Eli more than you know, but I cannot be here forever. I want to help you become strong so that one day you won't need me to be here every day. That is how I can truly help you." Mary's eyes filled with a mixture of sadness and understanding. She nodded slowly, realizing that her feelings, though strong, could not dictate Daniel's life. Eli, sensing the seriousness of the conversation, came closer and took Daniel's hand. Daniel smiled gently at him, trying to ease the tension. He knew that the boy's trust and love were pure, but also that it had to be balanced with guidance toward independence. The next few weeks were some of the most challenging yet. Daniel carefully stepped back in small ways, allowing Mary to make more decisions on her own. She struggled at first, forgetting a task here, misjudging a problem there, but gradually she began to feel more confident. Eli also learned to try things without immediately relying on Daniel. Daniel guided them when necessary, but always emphasized their ability to succeed independently. During this time, Daniel also noticed the reactions of the other villagers. Some admired his dedication and the way he was helping Mary and Eli, seeing it as an example of kindness and selflessness. Cup.
Others were cautious, unsure whether his involvement was creating dependence or disrupting the natural balance of the community. Daniel understood their concerns.
He knew that helping someone was not always about doing for them. It was about guiding, teaching, and supporting in a way that allowed them to grow. One afternoon, a small crisis arose. Eli had fallen and scraped his knee while playing near the garden. Mary panicked at first, unsure how to handle it. Daniel arrived quickly, calmly cleaning the wound and reassuring both of them. But instead of taking over completely, he encouraged Mary to participate, showing her step by step how to care for Eli. By the end, Mary had washed and bandaged the scrape herself, and Eli beamed with pride. Daniel smiled, realizing that this was exactly what he had hoped to achieve: guidance without dependency. That evening, as they sat outside their home, Mary spoke softly. "I know you are right," she said. "I can do more than I thought, but it's hard to let go of needing you sometimes."
Daniel nodded.
"I know it is hard. But strength grows through challenges, not by avoiding them. You and Eli are already stronger than you realize." The conversation left both of them thoughtful. Daniel understood that helping someone was not always easy or comfortable. It required patience, wisdom, and sometimes stepping back when instinct might want to step in. But he also saw the growth in Mary and Eli, small but undeniable, like the shoots in the garden they had planted together. As days turned to weeks, the family continued to grow stronger. Mary managed more tasks on her own. Eli became more confident at school and in his play, and Daniel found a balance between guidance and stepping back. They still shared laughter, meals, and quiet moments under the stars, but the dynamic had shifted. Mary and Eli were learning to trust themselves, not just Daniel, and he could feel a quiet pride in their progress.
Yet despite this progress, Daniel could sense that the challenges were not over.
Emotional dependence was subtle, and he had to remain vigilant to ensure that Mary and Eli could continue to grow without relying solely on him. The village had begun to see the family differently now, some with respect, some with cautious curiosity. Daniel knew that the bonds they had formed were fragile, and that his role was to strengthen them while preparing Mary and Eli for the time when he would no longer be there. And as the sun set over the hills one evening, casting golden light across the village, Daniel sat with Mary and Eli, reflecting on the journey so far. He realized that helping someone was not just about doing for them. It was about guiding, teaching, and empowering. He had come as a stranger, but he was now a part of their lives, a presence that mattered deeply. Yet he also knew that true help required balance, patience, and the courage to allow those he cared for to stand on their own. Daniel looked at Mary and Eli, feeling a deep sense of connection and responsibility. Their trust in him was a gift, but also a reminder that life's greatest lessons often came through struggle, growth, and the careful guidance of someone who truly cared. And as the stars began to appear in the sky, he knew that the next challenges would test not just his kindness, but his wisdom and the strength of the bonds they had all formed together. The warm days of summer were beginning to fade, and the first hints of autumn whispered through the hills. Daniel had settled into a quiet rhythm with Mary and Eli, and for a time everything seemed to be going smoothly. Mary was more confident in her abilities, handling daily chores, the garden, and Eli schooling with growing skill. Eli was learning to solve problems on his own, no longer looking to Daniel for every small task.
District. Jib. Daniel knew that growth was not a straight path.
Life had a way of testing even the strongest foundations, and he could sense that a challenge was coming that would test everything they had learned.
It started with a minor problem.
One morning, Mary discovered that the water pump near their home had stopped working. At first, it seemed like a simple issue, but as Daniel examined it, he realized that the damage was more serious than he had thought.
Fixing it would require tools they did not have, and the nearest supply store was miles away in a town over the hills.
Mary's face fell, and she looked to Daniel with worry.
I don't know how we will manage without water, she admitted quietly.
Everything depends on it. Daniel took a deep breath, knowing that this was a perfect opportunity for Mary to put into practice what they had been learning together.
We will figure it out, he said, keeping his tone calm. But this is a chance for you to try on your own first. I will guide you if you need it, but I want you to make the first decisions.
Mary hesitated, but after a few moments, she nodded. She gathered buckets, checked the old pump for obvious problems, and made a plan for collecting water from a nearby stream temporarily. Daniel watched from a distance, ready to assist if necessary, but letting her take the lead. Eli followed her, curious and eager to help. At first, things did not go smoothly. Mary misjudged the amount of water needed, and Eli dropped a bucket that spilled half of its contents. Both of them felt discouraged, and Mary sighed, frustrated with herself. Daniel approached, kneeling beside her. "It's okay," he said gently. "Mistakes happen. The important thing is that you tried. Keep going. You can solve this." Encouraged by Daniel's calm words, Mary tried again. She adjusted her plan, made sure the buckets were balanced, and taught Eli to be more careful. Step by step, they managed to bring enough water for the household. When they finally returned home with their collected water, Mary's face shone with pride, and Eli clapped his hands, thrilled at their success. Daniel smiled, realizing that this small crisis had been an important lesson. But the challenges did not stop there. Later that week, Eli came home from school looking upset. A group of children had teased him about his shy nature and the time he spent with Daniel, calling him a stranger's boy. Eli tried to brush it off, but Daniel could see the hurt in his eyes. Daniel knelt beside him, placing a hand on his shoulder. "Eli," he said softly, "what they say does not define who you are. You are strong, and you are learning. These moments can teach us how to be brave." Eli looked at him, unsure, but Daniel continued. "Tomorrow, let's practice standing up for yourself, using your words. You can be kind, but firm.
You can face these challenges without letting them bring you down." The next day, they went to the playground together.
Daniel stayed nearby, quietly observing while Eli faced the children. At first, Eli was nervous, stumbling over his words. But with Daniel's encouragement, he found his voice and spoke firmly yet calmly. By the end, some of the children respected his courage, and Eli returned home beaming. Daniel gave him a proud smile.
"See? You handled it." While these were small victories, a larger challenge arose when an unexpected storm swept through the hills. Heavy rain poured down, flooding parts of the village, and their garden was in danger.
The small adobe house held, but water threatened to damage the crops and wash away months of work. Mary's eyes filled with worry as she surveyed the damage, and Eli clung to her, frightened by the thunder and lightning. Daniel knew he had to act quickly.
"Mary! We need to protect the garden!"
"Let's work together." He handed her tarps and ropes, instructing her on how to secure the plants. At first, she hesitated, unsure if she could manage the work under such pressure. Daniel's calm presence encouraged her, and step by step she learned to adjust the tarps, tie the ropes, and protect as much as possible. Eli helped too, carrying small tools and holding the edges of the tarp. Hours passed, and by the time the storm ended, they had saved most of the garden. Exhausted but relieved, they sat together, drenched and muddy, yet triumphant. Mary's hands shook slightly as she took a deep breath.
I didn't know I could do that, she admitted. I felt scared, but we managed.
Daniel smiled warmly. You did it. You both did. This is the kind of strength that comes from practice and courage. You can face challenges even when they seem impossible. The storm left a lasting impression on them. It showed Mary and Eli that they were capable of handling emergencies, even without Daniel taking full control. It also reminded Daniel of the importance of balance, helping them when necessary, but stepping back to let them grow. In the days after the storm, Daniel focused on teaching Mary and Eli practical skills for the future. He showed Mary how to reinforce the garden for heavy rain, how to plan for seasonal changes, and how to organize supplies for emergencies. He taught Eli simple lessons in problem solving, encouraging him to think creatively and independently. Each day, their confidence grew, and Daniel felt a quiet satisfaction in seeing their progress.
Yet, emotional challenges persisted.
Mary's gratitude sometimes turned into dependence, and she struggled to let go of needing Daniel's reassurance.
One evening, as they sat outside watching the sunset, she spoke quietly.
I know you are trying to help me grow stronger, but sometimes I feel afraid of making mistakes without you. Daniel took her hand gently. It's natural to feel that way.
Growth is never easy, but mistakes do not define you.
He glances around and desperately trekking. You have the knowledge and strength to make good choices. I'm here to guide, not to control.
You are capable, Mary, and Eli is learning from you every day.
Bad. Mary nodded, tears welling in her eyes.
She realized that Daniel's guidance was not a sign of weakness, but a gift of learning and empowerment.
Eli, sensing the seriousness of the moment, leaned against her and smiled. Daniel smiled back, feeling the depth of the bond that had formed between them. By the end of this period, the family had grown stronger than ever. They faced challenges both big and small and learned to rely on their own skills and courage. Breaths was still important, but it was no longer about solving every problem. It was about encouragement, guidance, and teaching them to trust themselves. As the first chill of autumn entered the hills, Daniel reflected on the journey so far. He realized that true help was not about being needed constantly. It was about building strength, resilience, and confidence, even if it meant stepping back at times. Mary and Eli were no longer dependent in the same way. They had learned to face challenges, solve problems, and care for one another with courage and independence. That night, as they sat outside under the stars, Daniel felt a sense of fulfillment and quiet hope. The road ahead would have more challenges, but he knew that Mary and Eli were ready. He also knew that his role, delicate and important, was preparing them for a future where they could thrive without relying solely on him. And as the stars shimmered above, Eli fell asleep with his head resting on Mary's shoulder, and Mary leaned back against Daniel. In that moment, Daniel understood the true meaning of his presence. Not just help, but teaching, guiding, and inspiring. Their journey together was far from over, but they were stronger, braver, and more prepared than ever. The cool autumn breeze whispered through the hills, carrying with it the faint smell of dried leaves and smoke from chimneys. Daniel sat outside Mary and Eli's small adobe home, watching the village awaken to the soft morning light. It was a peaceful scene, but Daniel knew that today marked an important turning point. The time had come for him to consider leaving the village and allowing Mary and Eli to continue on their own. Though he had helped guide them for months, he understood that true help meant letting go at the right moment. Mary approached him quietly, her eyes bright but filled with a mix of sadness and pride. Daniel, she said softly, I know you have to go eventually, but it won't be easy to see you leave. Tasing. Daniel smiled gently, taking her hand in his. I know, he replied. But leaving doesn't mean I won't care about you or Eli. You both have grown so much. You are strong, capable, and ready for the challenges ahead. I'm not leaving because I don't care. I'm leaving because you are ready to stand on your own. His small face full of curiosity and a hint of concern.
Are you really going, Daniel? He asked, his voice trembling slightly.
Daniel knelt down to meet the boy's eyes. Yes, Eli, he said softly. But this doesn't mean I'm gone from your heart. I will always be proud of you, and I will remember everything we have shared. You are brave, smart, and kind. You can face anything that comes your way. Eli's lower lip trembled, but then he nodded slowly. I will try to be brave, he said. Daniel smiled and hugged him gently. Over the next few days, Daniel focused on preparing Mary and Eli for his departure. They spent time reviewing the lessons they had learned, managing the garden, planning meals, handling emergencies, and solving problems independently.
He reminded Mary that mistakes were part of growth and that she had the ability to make decisions with confidence.
Eli practiced solving challenges without relying on Daniel, learning that courage came from trying, even when the outcome was uncertain. One afternoon, Daniel and Mary went through the supplies and resources they had accumulated over the months. They organized the storage area, labeled containers, and made plans for winter. Daniel encouraged Mary to take charge, guiding her gently when she hesitated.
You've learned so much, he said. You don't need me for every decision.
You are ready to handle these things on your own. Mary smiled, a mixture of pride and apprehension. I feel ready, she admitted.
But it's still scary. I've grown so used to having you here.
Daniel nodded, understanding completely.
It's okay to feel scared. That's normal. Courage isn't the absence of fear, it's moving forward despite it.
The following day, Daniel spent time with Eli in the garden. They checked the plants, watered them, and even added a few new seeds. Eli had grown more confident, carrying buckets and handling tools with care. Daniel encouraged him, offering praise for his hard work and problem-solving skills.
Look at you, he said, smiling. You've grown so much.
I'm proud of you. Eli beamed, his confidence shining. That evening, as the sun dipped behind the hills, Daniel, Mary, and Eli sat outside their home, sharing a simple meal. They talked about memories from the past months, the small victories, the challenges they had overcome, and the lessons they had learned together. Laughter filled the air, but there was also a quiet sadness at the thought of Daniel leaving. Mary spoke softly, her voice trembling. I never imagined we could make it this far. You've given us more than help, you've given us hope. Daniel smiled, feeling a lump in his throat. You've given me hope too, he said. Being here with you and Eli has taught me more than I could ever say.
You've shown me what it means to care deeply and to grow together, and now it's time for you to continue that journey on your own.
The night before his departure, Daniel could hardly sleep. He sat outside under the stars, listening to the quiet rustling of leaves and the distant sounds of the village. He reflected on the months he had spent with Mary and Eli, the challenges, the laughter, the tears, and the small moments of triumph. He realized that his journey with them had been one of the most meaningful experiences of his life. At dawn, he packed his few belongings, ready to leave. Mary and Eli were waiting outside, their faces filled with mixed emotions. Daniel knelt to hug Eli one last time. Remember everything we've practiced, he said. Be brave, be kind, and trust yourself. You can do anything. Eli clung to him tightly, whispering, "I'll try, Daniel. I promise." Mary stepped forward, holding Daniel's hand. "Thank you for everything," she said softly. "You've given us the strength to believe in ourselves. I will never forget you." Daniel smiled warmly. "And I will never forget you or Eli. You have both taught me so much about courage, resilience, and love. Now it's time for you to take what you've learned and continue to grow." With a final embrace, Daniel turned and began his walk down the hill, leaving the village behind. As he walked, he glanced back to see Mary and Eli standing together, watching him go. Their faces were proud yet tender, a reflection of the journey they had shared. Daniel felt a mix of sadness and fulfillment, knowing that he had done his best to prepare them for life without him. In the days that followed, Mary and Eli adjusted to life without Daniel's daily presence. Mary took charge of the household, tending the garden, managing supplies, and supporting Eli in his studies. Eli grew more confident, solving problems on his own and facing challenges with courage. Though they missed Daniel, they carried the lessons he had taught them, lessons of independence, resilience, and hope. Daniel, meanwhile, continued his journey, carrying the memories of Mary and Eli with him. He thought of the times they had shared, the small victories and the challenges overcome, and felt a quiet pride. He realized that helping someone did not mean staying forever. It meant teaching, guiding, and empowering them to stand on their own. Months later, Daniel received a letter from Mary. She wrote about the successes they had achieved since his departure. The garden had flourished. Eli had done well in school, and they had faced challenges with courage and confidence. Mary expressed her gratitude once more, emphasizing that Daniel's guidance had been the foundation for their growth. Reading the letter, Daniel smiled, feeling a sense of fulfillment that words could not fully express. He knew that the bonds they had formed would always remain, even if their paths were now separate. He had come as a stranger, but he had left as a friend, a guide, and someone who had helped shape the future of a mother and her child. As he looked out over the hills from a new village, Daniel reflected on his journey. He realized that true help was not measured by how long one stayed, but by the impact one made. Mary and Eli had learned to trust themselves, to face challenges with courage, and to grow stronger together. And in that, Daniel saw the most meaningful reward of all, the knowledge that his presence had made a lasting difference. The story ended not with finality, but with hope. Mary and Eli were ready to face life's challenges, carrying the lessons of resilience, courage, and independence that Daniel had imparted.
Daniel, meanwhile, moved forward on his journey, enriched by the experience and the bonds of friendship he had formed.
And though they were apart, the connection they shared remained, a quiet reminder of the power of kindness, guidance, and trust. As the sun set on the hills, Daniel paused, thinking of Mary and Eli. He knew that their journey would continue, filled with challenges and triumphs, and that they were now ready to face it together. And in that moment he felt a sense of peace, knowing that helping someone truly meant giving them the strength to thrive on their own.